Today we're going to look at a formula called index.match. It's a combination of an index formula and a match formula, and we're going to use it in place of doing a vlookup. The reason why we would use index.match as opposed to using just a vlookup is because the vlookup is going to simply look at verticals, so columns, based off what's in this leftmost column here. Now the problem with that, of course, is if we wanted to use column B, we'd have to eliminate column A to be able to run our vlookup. At the same time, vlookup will not look across the rows per se. It's only going to look vertically at the columns. HLOOKUP would be used to do a horizontal lookup across rows. Index.match scans both rows and columns to match the data with the lookup value, and it can be done based off of any column we choose or any row we choose. So I've got a couple examples here of how this works. And so what I've got are just some countries and then some populations, a couple of years, a couple different things here. So to write this formula, I'm going to use this index.match right here, and you'll see this formula. It says equals index, and then so it's going to index this column here, and then it's going to match based off the lookup value, which is here, to this. So my goal here is to be able to say equals index. So I want to index this data here, because that's what I'm looking for, is the information there, and then I'm going to match it, the lookup value being whatever I type in here. I'm going to match that to this column here. And then I'm going to choose an exact match. So I'm going to choose 0, 2 parentheses, because I've got a parentheses here and a parentheses here, and hit enter. And so you'll see here it says 500,000. So if I go over here and I say USA, notice it changes to 600,000. So whatever I type in there, it then matches that value to this column right here. So that's index.match, and that's pretty simple. We can actually take this and expand it a step further, though, because the fact that we can work off of using multiple lookup values, multiple matches. I've got a formula here. You'll see what I've done. I said index A1 through D11, so that's this whole entire table. And I'm going to match first with F5, so my country here. And I'm going to match that to column B. And then I'm going to match F6, the year, to A1D1. So what it's going to do now is it's going to go and it's going to index the entire table. It's going to match the country and the year, and then it's going to return where those two meet. So let's type in that formula. So if we say equals index, so we want to index the entire table. So then we're going to do match. So our first thing we're going to match is here, and we're going to match that to column D. And we'll say 0 because we want an exact match. Then we're going to do it again. So now we're going to match F6 going across here. So we're going to match it to 2016 or 2015. So you've entered too many arguments. So what it wants me to do, it wants me to go in here and do the 2 commas. So notice what it did. So it said index, in parentheses here, and parentheses here to close it, and then to match this and to match this. So by doing that, you'll notice parentheses here and here, so that stays in parentheses, that stays in parentheses, so it matches the 2. So if we change this to 2015, notice it changes to 900,000, which is this number here. We change it to 2016. We change this to USA. Notice it changes the number here. Of course, it's changing it over here because we've already got that formula in, but then we've got the index formula here. So I went a little deeper on this, and I did this with students to where I could pick a student, pick a standard, and you'll notice it updates that as well using the same formula. And then I do it big time here. So what I did here is I've got all of these different countries, and then I've got all of these different years worth of GDP data. So when we go to this one here, what I did is I turned this into a list. Remember, you can do this if you go to data, you can go here to data validation, and then you can use a list. So now it creates a drop down. So I did a drop down for here and did a drop down for here. And then using that exact same formula, and this of course being on a different sheet, so you'll see index data, so that's the sheet down here, and then that table, A1 through M265. So then I'm going to match that up against this cell here. Of course, that's the A cell, so that tells me, of course, to look for the country. Then it tells me to match to the year. So once it matches this and this, it returns that very specific cell. So that's where index differs from vlookup. If I was doing this with a vlookup, it'd be a lot more difficult because basically this formula here would have to be based off of if, and it'd be a lot more complicated. And so using the index formula, I can index this entire table and then just match whatever's here and here to return this number. So we can change this. We can work our way around. And that tells me the GDP of that country for that year. So this is a pretty neat formula in terms of how it works, being able to match stuff up. And remember, you can do it with a single thing where you're matching up this row, this column here to this column here to find a very specific row and column so that I get a very specific cell. Or here, where I've done to index this entire table to then find with B and then whichever two of the years I want to go back. So this can be used to set up multiple variables to be able to pull information. And the nice thing about this as compared to vlookup is that I can do this based off of column B, column C, column D, or any row that I want. I don't have to tie this to this column here, which is exactly what I'd have to do in vlookup.